your dope fiend. Your life may depend on it. You will not be able to see his eyes because of T-shades, but his knuckles will be white from inner tension. And his pants will be crusted with semen from constantly checking off when he can't find a rape victim. He will stagger and babble when questioned. He will not respect your badge. The dope fiend fears nothing.
Hey, Colonel. I just called really to hear the message. And I'll talk to you later. Maybe sooner. Oh, look at that goddamn thing, man. Woo!
Johnny Depp, or as he was referred to in the voicemail, the Colonel, has never been an actor with the cleanest of reputations. Ever since bursting onto the scene in the 1980s, Depp's star has continued to rise throughout the many years he has spent acting, and with it, some controversy has arisen as a natural byproduct of success, fame, and money. These pitfalls that we see so many actors, musicians, writers, and artists of all types of mediums fall into are as common a story as it gets. The story of the young artist who gets everything they ever wanted too quickly for their own good, resulting in either an artist whose potential was never realised, or an artist who managed to just about hold it together, yet upon maturing, must look back on a past with more than a few questionable moments. In relation to the latter, when we look back over these checkered pasts, you can almost chalk up the less harmful moments of their delinquent phase to a lack of direction, a lack of a wing to fall under. But what happens when the man who takes you under his wing is even crazier in his 50s than you could ever dream of being in your 20s? How do you trust the man who points in one direction and assures you that is the way, when in his other hand is a glass of Chivas Regal, and his eyes are darting back and forth from some substance taken a few minutes prior? How does the man who wrote Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas keep you grounded? The answer, he doesn't. At least in this case, what happens is not a young man with everything in his hands being ushered down a safe and sensible path by a man 20 years his senior. No. Instead, what you get is a 10-year enabling of one another's vices, and a new member appointed into the Honourable Order of Kentucky Colonels. Oh, and a few interesting stories to go along with it. This is the tale of the strange friendship of actor Johnny Depp, the Colonel, and Gonzo writer Hunter S. Thompson, the Doctor. The friendship began in December 1994 at the infamous Woody Creek Tavern in Colorado. Depp had been invited down to the bar with expectations of potentially meeting Thompson, as he was an admirer of his work. The tavern was crowded, and Depp was sitting at a table located at the back of the room when suddenly, about 50 yards from him, the front door swung open, and sparks started flying over the heads of the crowd. As the sparks got closer, the crowd parted, revealing Thompson, who was wielding a 3-foot cattle prod and a taser gun. 2 items Thompson referred to as his just-in-case weapons. Thompson approached Depp's table, held out his hand and said, "How are you? My name is Hunter." For the rest of the night, the two bonded over their Kentucky heritage, troubled youths, and love of literature, resulting in Thompson inviting Depp and his group back to his home in the early hours of the morning. Upon entering Thompson's home, Depp commented on a nickel-plated 12-gauge shotgun hanging on the wall, calling it beautiful. To which Thompson responded, "Would you like to shoot it?" Depp said yes, and Thompson, as any reasonable man would, wisely added, "Shit man, we must build a bomb." Thus, a bomb was made from some propane tanks and nitroglycerin, placed in Thompson's backyard, and shot at with the 12-gauge by Depp, who hit the target on his first shot, creating a fireball that soared 80 feet into the air. As the sound of the blast resounded around the empty hills of Thompson's backyard, and the orange glare lifted up into the atmosphere, an understanding that needn't be vocalized was felt between the two men, as if Depp had passed an initiation of some sort, or a rite of passage. From here on in, the two would be inseparable. In the coming months, when the two weren't hanging out in person, they would constantly speak on the phone, and usually, owing to Thompson's unique sleep schedule, Depp would receive calls in the early hours of the morning, warning him of threats like the black hairy tongue disease which may be infiltrating their ranks. Thompson would always open these calls by referring to Depp as Colonel Depp, as Thompson had appointed Depp as a Kentucky colonel soon into their friendship. On one of these late night calls, Thompson, whilst working as a Rolling Stone correspondent in Cuba, called Depp and told him to fly over to meet him. Depp's response was to immediately drop what he was doing to do so, and whilst Thompson's original plans for being in Cuba, interviewing Fidel Castro, fell through, the piece he did write wound up retelling the adventures he and Depp had during their stay. Depp would later describe that whole trip as ludicrous and surreal. Thus, for the following year, these ludicrous and surreal adventures and incessant late-night phone calls continued accordingly, until one day in March of 1996, when Depp received yet another phone call from Thompson. However, this time, the call was made at a sensible hour and on an unusual but important matter of business. Depp answered, and without even a hello, Thompson said, "Listen, they're talking of making a movie of Vegas. What do you think of playing me?" Depp responded, "Absolutely," and Thompson hung up. From here, the months went by and not another word was spoken of the movie until late 1996, when Depp's agent contacted Depp to tell him director Alex Cox would be directing the movie on Fear and Loathing. Depp, having not spoken to Thompson about the movie since the one call, thought it best to clarify with Thompson whether he still had his blessing to portray him. "If I even remotely do an accurate portrayal, you'll probably hate me for the rest of your life." Thompson denied there being any chance of him hating Depp, claiming that he was still friends with Bill Murray, who had portrayed Thompson before. When later asked about this fear of Depp's in an interview, Thompson expanded on the matter by saying, "Actors take themselves too seriously. Is he saying I'm a monster? Does he mean I'm going to see myself stripped naked? He worries too much. He couldn't possibly do an accurate job. He's too short." With Depp given the go-ahead, all that was needed was Alex Cox's blessing from Thompson, which wasn't given when the two met on January 12, 1997, leading to Terry Gilliam stepping in to take on the project. Thompson and Gilliam hit it off, and Gilliam got Thompson's blessing. The movie was on. With the movie going into the production stage within a few months, Depp told Thompson he would need to live with him in order to get the character of Raoul right, reassuring him that he could kick him out of his house whenever he became a nuisance. Thompson agreed and allowed Depp to stay in his basement, otherwise referred to as the dungeon, and he would remain there for months analysing Thompson, constantly asking questions and living every day as if he were him. Depp would later recall a day in the life during the period as such. "A normal day is actually waking up at about 8, 9 at night, watching ESPN, watching sports or CNN. Deborah would cook breakfast and give us vitamins. She's a saint. Not much dialogue for the first few hours, Hunter's waking up, and then we'd sit and talk for hours and hours, and then maybe drive down to a nearby town and have a drink or two, and then come back and talk until 3, 4, 5 in the afternoon." Depp would also recall how he observed Thompson. Watching his mannerisms, the way he rocked back and forth, the way he talked, his expressions. It's weird with Hunter, it's more sort of watching the way he thinks. You can see the wheels turning, and you can see an idea coming. That was really the key for me, because he's thinking constantly. He's very, very quick, and there are no lulls. As well as talking and drinking with Thompson, Depp would also read unpublished pieces and be given access to 3 boxes, all given the label Vegas Book, which contained notebooks Thompson had used, and memorabilia of the trip to Vegas in the early 70s. After reading the notebooks, Depp would claim that the book was a calmer version of what happened. Thompson would also get Depp to read aloud to him, and would critique him on his delivery. Lastly, as the months passed and Depp continued his research, Thompson allowed Depp to borrow the infamous Red Shark, as well as lend the clothes he wore in the early 70s, and, on Depp's final visit prior to filming the movie, Thompson shaved Depp's head to resemble his own. And with that small detail refined, the movie finally went into its production stage, with Depp now fully transformed into the character of Raoul Duke. One notable story arose from the production stage on October 8, 1997, when Thompson was set to make a cameo in the movie. The scene in which the cameo takes place is set inside the Matrix Club in San Francisco. In the scene, Depp plays a young Thompson who, whilst on acid, walks past an older version of himself, played by the real Thompson, who was 60 at the time. On the day of the shoot, Thompson and his entourage, including Deborah, his assistant, and Chris Heath, a Rolling Stone journalist, were driven in a limo to the set and arrived in the morning. The filming of the scene was not going to take place until the evening, and so Thompson spent the entire day in Depp's trailer waiting for the crew to prepare the set. In the interval from Thompson's arrival and filming, Thompson kicked a chair into Depp's CD player, refused to change out of his stained clothes, an accident that occurred in the limo ride, applied red lipstick to himself, threw multiple objects around the trailer at great velocity, applied a mustache to himself with a black marker, and all the while, drank heavily. However, when the crew was ready, Thompson's clothes were changed, the lipstick and mustache were removed, and he was placed in position for the shot. The shot itself was wrapped up in only 3 takes. The first shows Depp walking past Thompson, looking at him, continuing walking, and then taking a second glance. In the second, Gillian asked Depp to do the same, but to only acknowledge Thompson once. And in the third, as Depp was looking towards Thompson once again, Thompson, without any pre-warning, lunged towards Depp and grabbed him from over the table. When asked about why he lunged at Depp, Thompson would wax poetic over his reasonings. I'm not sure what the lurch implied. Was it a striking out, or a yearning for my previous self? All lives are the same. The living and the dead are one. Am I trying to make some metaphor there, or am I trying to smack him out of the way? It's like the blind, lashing out at a dumb animal. Director Terry Gilliam would later say that although Thompson only visited the set once, that particular day was hell, as he also threw bread rolls around the set and was more focused on making the day about himself rather than the film. Thus, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was released on May 22nd, 1998. The movie failed financially and reviews were volatile. However, today it is considered a cult classic. However, the mixed reviews didn't seem to bother Depp, as the only opinion of the movie he cared about was Thompson's, who would later expand on his opinions when interviewed by Charlie Rose later in the year. I liked it really. It was an experience. You have to go through the fire, and I maybe would have done it differently, but I'm not a movie director. Yeah, I'm good at books. So I liked it, yeah, but I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't have my children see it every night. It was during the period in which the movie was made that Depp and Thompson would spend the most time together, and Depp would state that the period in 1997 when he stayed in the dungeon was his favourite period of knowing him. It was also the period in which Depp would discover an old manuscript of Thompson's while sifting through his old writing. The manuscript was a novel Thompson wrote in his 20s, titled The Rum Diary, and was published in 1998. Whilst the two would continue to remain friends for the following years, regularly catching up with one another, there was no period where they were as intimate as during the making of Fear and Loathing, and due to that period, both men got to know each other very well. And so, it came as no surprise to Johnny Depp when he heard of Thompson's suicide on the 20th of February 2005, as the two had routinely spent hours at Owl Farm talking about Thompson's funeral arrangements and his death. Even though there was great shock when he died at 67, it really wasn't a shock. More than anything, it was a devastating blow. Like, oh my god, I'll never get those calls anymore, or hear that fucker's voice. The Too Much Fun Club will be dispersed. To honour one of Thompson's final wishes, Depp would famously arrange and pay for Thompson's ashes to be blown out of a 153-foot cannon, custom made to include Thompson's Gonzo logo, a double-thumbed fist holding a peyote button. The funeral was held in private and took place at Owl Farm on August 20th, 2005. Up to 280 people were there, including some celebrities. Prior to the funeral taking place, Depp had this to say when asked about the extravagance of the setup. "All I'm doing is trying to make sure his last wish comes true. We had talked a couple of times about his last wishes to be shot out of a cannon of his own design. I just want to send my pal out the way he wants to go out." And that he did, as the event was a success, and was even rumoured to have cost Depp up to $3 million. Following Thompson's death, Depp has only been more than happy to speak on the topic of their friendship whenever asked. Yet, whilst praising Thompson as a writer and as a colourful character, he has frequently praised Thompson's humanity. One interesting aspect of Thompson's personality Depp has routinely remarked upon was his sensitivity, claiming that he was a hypersensitive human being who self-medicated, and also that he went to great lengths to take care of Depp. It wouldn't be until 6 years following his death, in 2011, when Depp would once again undertake the role of Thompson in the film adaptation of the book, The Rum Diary. This time, without having Thompson there to cause any obstructions, the production went along smoothly, yet at all times, a pack of Dunhills and a bottle of Chivas Regal were kept on set in Thompson's memory. However, it wasn't just those two tokens that kept Thompson's name alive. In 1980, the first ever film adaptation of Thompson's work and character was undertaken by Bill Murray in Where the Buffalo Roam. Murray had undertaken the role in a similar fashion to Depp, by hanging out with Thompson relentlessly, firing guns, causing trouble, etc., and all the while, silently analysing Thompson's mannerisms. What concluded from this research was an accurate portrayal of Thompson, yet it didn't come without a cost. A cost Murray would warn Depp of when hearing of his plans to portray Thompson for the Fear and Loathing movie 17 years later. Make your next role drastically different from Hunter, otherwise you'll find yourself 10 years from now still doing him. Depp would take the advice on board, however, it would later prove difficult for Depp to shake the mannerisms and personality quirks he had drilled into himself for the last year. An example of this is shown 4 weeks following the release of Fear and Loathing, when Depp was interviewed by Chris Heath, the Rolling Stone journalist who had witnessed Thompson's spectacle on the day of his cameo. In the first few lines of the article produced by Heath, Thompson's aura still appeared to have a hold over Depp. It is now 4 weeks since he finished playing Dr. Hunter S. Thompson's alter ego, Raoul Duke, in the film of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But many of Thompson's mannerisms and behavioural tics are still with Depp, and they show no signs of letting go. Inside his head, it may be even worse. Heath may have been onto something when he claimed they showed no signs of letting go, as Depp would also comment on Thompson's presence within him 13 years after Heath penned these lines, when interviewed for the release of The Rum Diary in 2011. It's possible Depp may never shake Thompson, and likely, he doesn't even want to. I feel him every single day, literally, from the time I wake up and have coffee to when I plop my head down on the pillow. I'm haunted by him, and I'm ecstatic for it. I was very fortunate back then to know that whatever was going on, whatever was happening with us, whatever we were doing, I knew it was really special. And I knew that was never going to happen again. I'm very lucky.